Maybe we looked at our 401k balance and said, hey, if I only take this much out per year, I'll never run out of money, which could be true. However, we need to factor in taxes, right? Retiring sooner is often the right call if your income plan is ready to go today. Are you thinking one more year is the right answer? It might be wrong.
Hello and welcome to the Relax, It's Retirement podcast with your host, Josh Leonard, where we talk about transitioning into retirement with intent. I'm Wendy McConnell. Well, hello there, Josh. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic today, Wendy. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. It feels like a Monday. So
I have to say it's warm for us. We've been in this like really close to zero or negative temperatures for about a week. And I was walking the dog this morning and I forgot my gloves and I was like, it's kind of warm out. And I looked and it was like 30 degrees. So, I thought about going for a swim, felt like summer again.
Yeah. It's been a drastic difference. So I have a question. I have a baby. You know that I have a puppy.
Dog.
I've not been walking her in. Yes, dog baby, fur baby. Do you still walk your dog in the freezing, like sub-freezing temperatures?
Yes, not for very long. However, she's a golden retriever with a little bit of insulation, so she does not seem to mind the cold. Now, I do have to say in this like extreme cold, she's not outside for long, but like normal snowy day, her default is, I'm going to go roll in the snow and you're not going to get me back inside. So she's been fine. We have done like sled riding and stuff where she's been a little quicker to come inside with the super cold temperatures. But in fairness, I think we're all there. The more difficult part is the level of snow that we've had with dogs. So, they have a certain amount of clearance when doing their business. That has been a little bit more of a challenge for us walking, but...
Okay.
We'll spare the listeners those details. Their imagination can figure that out, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, this is not what we're talking about today anyway, right?
No. And in fact, the necessity for me of walking the dog or letting the dog do their business is something that cannot wait. Now, what we're talking about today is what we hear from many clients frequently is, I'm just going to work for one more year, right? We're perpetually pushing off retirement. Now, there's a trade-off, right? For some folks, they can't wait to retire. For other folks, they're afraid to stop. This one hits home here as we are preparing for my mother-in-law to retire, and I think she's blaming her retirement on us. I don't think that she is certainly prepared to retire financially. But she's hesitating because she's loved her work for a long time. She's worked with people for a long time. So there's a trade-off there that we need to prepare for. Many times it can be to our detriment. So today we're going to talk about why one more year might actually steal your retirement.
I can see that. All right, let's get into it.
When we're leading up to prepare for retirement, right? We're looking ahead. We're building out the financial plan. We always want to come up with a realistic time. If someone comes to us maybe in their 50s and says, hey, I want to retire in 15 years, we have a lot of time to plan. If we're building out that plan over time and we've hit all of those benchmarks and 65 comes around, it's time to retire. At that point, we might start sacrificing our future if we don't start moving in that direction, right? We're not going to get more time. We only have a finite amount of time on this earth. The trade-off there, or maybe where some people might say, well, I think I need to work one more year. If we haven't checked off the boxes, right? If we haven't done planning to make sure that we have enough to retire, that's a whole different situation. Today, we're focusing on, we are financially prepared to retire, but for whatever reason, we might decide to work one more year.
Okay, because we love our work.
We love our work, and I think that there's purpose in work. And many times when we're earlier in a career, we may not realize how much gratification and how many great things come from work, right? There's stress there, but hopefully there's growth as well, right? So just like as we improve our pickleball skills, or our bike riding or anything else, right? There, no pain, no gain, right?
Right.
Work is the same way. As we build up a career, sometimes it's very rewarding. As we get later on, what we find with many retirees is they've driven a lot of purpose from that. So sometimes leaving that can be hard to do. I think also for many folks, as we build up our career, we start earning more income. And at some point, the kids move out of the house. If you've raised a family, you're not paying for college or other expenses anymore. And you're like, they're paying me a lot of money to hang out here, so maybe I'll just keep working a couple more years, right? It's not that hard. What we need to think through is that trade-off, because while it might not be that hard, do we have enough, right? If we have enough, do we need to potentially give our kids more? Are we donating more to charities? What are we doing with that additional money? While it might not be all that painful to go to work again, we are taking away that time, that energy, and that freedom that we have to do other things. Maybe there's loved ones that you have that really have wanted to do some things with you, right? I think when my dad was preparing to retire, the last couple of years that he was working leading up to it, my kids were super young. They're still super young, in fairness. But that was one of the things that he said, hey, if I had more time, I'd like to spend more time with the kids, with your kids, with my grandkids, right? They're only young for so long, and they're going to get older, and they're going to be teenagers, and no one's going to want to hang out with them except for their friends. No. All jokes aside, that time is limited. So whether it's with grandkids or maybe after raising a family, you just want to reconnect with your spouse and go do some fun stuff and not have to worry about the needs of others, just the needs of each other, and go do some fun stuff. As we keep working in those older ages, we don't know how much more time or energy or our mobility we have left. So if we've built out the framework, that one more year might be one less year that we have to do our bucket list or those important items to us. We think about it with clients all the time. So, well, I'm going to do it next year. That is good unless next year poses a new set of challenges and we can't. If we have enough, certainly we want to utilize that. We want to keep a grasp on what is most important to us. And I think that that's an important part of planning. We talked a couple episodes ago around goal setting for the new year, right? If our goals in retirement are to spend more time with grandkids, travel, see maybe some sites, maybe the national parks, whatever it might be, if we keep working till we're age 75, we have a lot less time to do that. And the practicality of getting those things done might not be there. One of our clients in Michigan was kind enough to share his retirement story. And he was a one more year kind of guy. He liked his job. He had worked for the company for a long time. He was kind of the top guy in his position, so he was comfortable. There was a coworker that sat next to him who started on the same day that he did and of similar age and had a fatal heart attack at work and literally died at the desk. And he said, well, if there's ever a sign, that's the sign.
That's it. Yeah. Oh, wow.
For him and his wife also cut hair for a living. So she had some arthritis issues, and it was just becoming a little bit harder to work. The work itself was pleasurable, but it was becoming harder to work. And one of the retirement goals for them was to see their grandkids walk down the aisle, to be there for the wedding of their grandkids. And I thought, you know what? If you have enough money, right? If that is the ultimate goal, then we got to step back from work and care for ourselves more, right? Taking that time to care for ourselves is something that we can do in retirement, right? If we've, beginning of the year, everyone goes to the gym. We just talked about this. It's a lot easier to go to the gym if you have more of the day to go to the gym, right? If your window to go to the gym is like 6 o'clock in the morning till 8 and it's 0 degrees outside, it's a lot harder to get your butt out the door, right? But if you go and you get to socialize with some friends and maybe do it before lunch, right? It becomes a lot easier. So building that in becomes really important to us and making sure that we have. Sometimes that one more year, we're grasping for a little bit more security, right? We're looking at the what ifs. So in planning, we want to build that in. A common one we hear is, what if I get sick, right? What if my spouse gets sick? So let's build out those scenarios. Certainly, I'm not encouraging folks to go jump off the cliff and retire today because they might get sick tomorrow, right? We need to balance these things out, but we need to stress test our plan enough to have that. One more year in perpetuity is not the right solution, right? We're not going to suddenly feel perfect in a year from now. We need to address the actual concern, not just keep pushing it off because we're afraid to take that step.
Okay.
There's an equation in bike riding, Wendy. It is the perfect number of bikes.
Yeah.
The number you have plus one more. That is not the correct number of years to work, right? Not the number you have plus one more, right? We need to find that and draw the line there. We did have a client that worked for a really long time preparing for retirement. We had done a lot of work for them. They were a 65 target, and they were deciding to work till age 66. For them, comfortable position at work, like their boss. They had a project that they kind of wanted to see through, right? So they had chose one more year. They were unexpectedly diagnosed with colon cancer during that time and forced to retire during that one more year. So all the fun planning, right? We never know when these things are going to happen, but all of that fun planning that we had done ahead of time turned into doctor's visits, appointments, treatment schedules, and in particular for this client's spouse, that became their full-time job as well. The spouse had retired a few years earlier, but they were waiting, right? They wanted to get to this point, and 65 is a typical milestone, right? That's when we go on to Medicare. We learn our ABCs again, we get onto Medicare, and hopefully most of our medical expenses are covered then, which is good. So hey, if that's the benchmark, let's commit to it. In this case, they were not able to enjoy healthy years in retirement. The client had passed, and now what they saved, which was enough for two, is more than enough for one, but the one doesn't have the partner to do the same stuff with. This is a common story in retirement. Certainly we want our best friend to be there with us throughout. So, let's develop the plan and let's stick to it the best that we can. Time is something that we don't have endless amounts of. I hear this conversation a lot in terms of my generation looking with your parents, right? How much time do you have to spend together? So I had talked about my dad wanting to be intentional about spending more time with the grandkids. Next week, I'm going to a conference with Yana. My parents will be here with the boys, and they'll get to spend some time together. My mom had expressed to me earlier this year that, hey, you know what? Like sometimes we come into town and you guys have all this stuff to do, right? In this case, we're going to a conference, but we aren't spending as much time with you guys now. And I'm like, oh, Mom, that's a great point. From my perspective, it is also how many more seasons, how many more years do I have left to spend that time with my parents? And we need to think through that. If you're, in that retirement generation, how many more trips do you have, right? How many more summers do you have? I think, especially this time of the year, whenever it's cold, if someone told you, hey, you only have 12 more summers left, or 10 or 15, whatever the number might be, would you change your plans, right? We need to think through that. And that doesn't have to mean financial. For most of the folks we work with, we joke all the time, you're not going to go from driving a Toyota Camry to a Bentley in retirement, right? We don't change our spending habits that much. If we only had 12 summers left, maybe we book the beach house that we used to years ago and ask the whole family to come, right? Maybe we are spending slightly more to facilitate that time together, but it's not necessarily that jump from a Camry to a Bentley, right? Maybe we spend a little bit more or help a family member with a flight or something like that to be able to spend that time together.
Well, and what's interesting is I'm reading a novel right now, which is going to be a movie, and I can't think of the name of the novel off the top of my head, but I do know that Ryan Gosling is the star of the movie. It's coming out soon.
That is noted.
But in this, there are people who are basically volunteering to do something in the name of science and to save humanity, but they will not be able to come back from outer space. Okay.
Yes.
And so while they're preparing to go on this trip, they're saying things like, well, we have to enjoy life as much as possible now. And that just made me really think about how much I wait on so many things.
Yes. We all do. It's not just a retirement thing, right? I think in one of like the productivity books that I had read years ago, it was, we have the to-do list. And if the to-do list is carried over for more than 3 days, it should become the to-don't list, because you're not prioritizing it. Either put it up to the top of the list and get it done, or don't do it, right? Why do we torture ourselves with it? I think for us, in thinking of retirement, like, let's be practical about it. We kind of have this trade-off filter that we'll walk through with clients where it's 3 questions. One, what does one more year buy me specifically?
Right.
What does one more year buy me specifically? So it could be, hey, you know what? There is peace of mind in me paying off my house. And if I work for one more year, I can just pay it off, right? Is it a healthcare bridge? We talked about 65 before. Is it that, hey, I wanted to retire at 64, but my cost of insurance with the way it is now is going to be prohibitively expensive? Okay, that might be a reason, right? Is it an increased margin for error? Is it that we don't have to reduce income in retirement, right? We can save just enough if we work one more year that we don't really need to reduce our lifestyle at all. Okay, those are things so let's make it specific, right? It's not just that we're working one more year. I'm kind of worried about it. 2, what does one more year cost me, right? What are we buying versus what's the cost? That time with family that we talked about, travel while healthy, having the flexibility and energy to do more things. When we work all day, it's often very hard to be excited to do things in the evening, right? Yana and I used to joke when we were younger. She lived in downtown Cleveland, and like you could walk to all these cool happening places that you would be, but both of us were working like 10 plus hours a day. And by the time Friday came around, I would drive from Pittsburgh into Cleveland, and we'd be like, what do you want to do? And it'd be like, just like order a pizza and watch a movie, right? Like, we're exhausted. I don't want to go out. Like, I'm done, right? And that makes us sound really boring, but when we're working a lot, we're expending our energy there. As we get older, we might not have as much energy too. So let's look at where that's going. What is that cost of one more year?
Yeah.
And then the third is, if the money was already handled, what would I choose today, right? So separate math from meaning. If we already have all the funds to retire and we know that we're going to be okay, why are we working, right? We need to think through that. So if everything's already handled, what would I choose? That last one is often telling for us as advisors, because that is where we can get into the specific concern, right? What is there an underlying concern? Is it that like, hey, I watched my parents run out of money in their 80s and I'm just worried that I'm not going to have enough, right? We can address that then and build out the plan to address those concerns specifically.
Mm-hmm.
For us, building through that, we need to utilize our tips, our planning framework, the true intent planning system. There, we're going to focus on income, right? Can you pay yourself after you retire, right? Are we confident that our income plan is strong enough? Is enough of our income guaranteed versus variable, where we know the amount coming in each and every month that we can sustain our lifestyle? And then what's the balance between needs and wants? Maybe we want to retire, but our plan is a little bit tight. Maybe we look for good times in the market, right? For those wants where we are still booking the trip as soon as we can, but it's when the market's good. We're kind of taking some of that higher growth off the table. That drives to our investment plan. How are we invested, right? Are we invested for retirement? We talked through our buckets, and don't worry, I got buckets. We got to have our cash bucket. We need to make sure that if we have an emergency, we're set up, right? We have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses that we can cover any of those surprises that come up. Past that, we need our income bucket. If we have 5 to 10 years of stable income set aside, we're good if the market crashes, right? If the market goes down like in 2008, we can be patient, which allows us for the rest of our money to grow. So that's our growth bucket, our red bucket. The growth bucket enables us to keep up with inflation over time and hopefully overcome any of those obstacles in the future.
Right.
When we look at investment planning, we want to think through our 3 buckets, but we also want to think about where we're spending the money from, right? So we use the buckets so it's easy to understand, right? If we have a financial emergency, we're not selling stocks that are invested in the market, right? Rather, we're going the other way. We're going to spend that cash first. We have income to replace there. We also need to think through a tax plan, right? Maybe we looked at our 401k balance and said, hey, if I only take this much out per year, I'll never run out of money, which could be true. However, we need to factor in taxes, right? Sometimes with taxes, we have a shrinking planning windows. We've talked about those RMDs, those required minimum distributions, the forced distributions from your IRA or 401k accounts. If we have the good saver tax problem where that forced distribution is going to be more than we need, if we keep working, we're only making that problem worse, right? We need to start spending down that money or doing some Roth conversions. We need to look at our charitable giving techniques as well, right? In retirement, we're in a different position there. In terms of health, we need to think through Medicare, right? We need to make sure that we're covering as much as we can. If we are retiring prior to age 65, how are we bridging that to Medicare? Making sure that we're allocating an appropriate amount of money that we're not going to run out during that time period. And then building in that flexibility, right? Things are going to change in retirement. We always need to have that flexibility. And then finally, that legacy plan. What do you want your money to mean to others, right? Maybe you want to help fund education for other family members if there's something left, right? Maybe it's giving away with warm hands versus cold hands. Like I had mentioned before, maybe it's booking that beach house and asking the whole family to come. Or, many times we'll hear from folks like, hey, I want to see my grandkids at Disney, right? So I'm going to pay for that. And I want to make sure we had one client that they stayed like right in the animal kingdom where you could see the giraffes and everything from the hotel room.
Nice.
The kids were not at a stage where they could pay for that for the grandkids. But grandma and grandpa wanted to experience that. So for them, it was, hey, we are going to gift some of that money. That can be part of your legacy plan, right? Rather than giving away the money after you die, enjoy it with your family members. As we run through this framework, Wendy, I think that the most important thing is figuring out your appropriate time, right? Retiring sooner is often the right call if your income plan is ready to go today, right? If we can replace income today, that is certainly the most important. If one more year doesn't really change the outcome of your plan, it might be time to retire. If you're delaying due to uncertainty, right? Just what ifs, let's address the what ifs, not just keep working out of a fear of what could come. We have to have clear priorities. So if you have that bucket list of things that you want to take care of while you're healthy, let's start knocking it out. Time seems to pass. For many of us, that one more year becomes a habit, just like the to-do list or, lots of parallels with exercise there too. So I think if you're listening to the episode today, let's think through that trade-off filter that we just ran through. Our 3 questions that we need to ask there. What does one more year buy me specifically? What does 1 year cost me specifically? And if the money was already handled, what would I choose today? That's a way to reflect back and make sure that you're in a good position.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big things that we keep learning is that we don't get to choose the timing of our health. Health comes at us often in unexpected ways. We can choose when to make our retirement decisions and to retire with intent. If the plan works today, retiring sooner might be the right answer. If you're listening today and you say, wow, that was a lot to think about, I'm pretty sure that I want to retire, but I'm also afraid to retire. Or you're evaluating, hey, is it this year or next year? We would love to help you. For us in our internal process, that's booking a strategy session where we start by kind of whiteboarding out, thinking high level. What are your retirement goals and concerns, and thinking through that? Looking at the actuality of what the 5 pillars of your retirement plan look like at this time. Building out that plan to make sure that you are empowered to take that step for retirement, whether it's this year, next year, or 5 years down the line. So I encourage you to schedule a call. In the show notes, there'll be a link to schedule that call with myself or a member of our team, and we can jump into a strategy session if it makes sense and help you get prepared for retirement. Wendy, thanks a lot for joining today. Don't retire tomorrow. I still need you, so it's not the right answer for you.
No plans to retire anytime soon.
Okay, good. Well, thanks again for joining, Wendy. And until next time, remember to retire with intent so you can live your golden years with the happiness and excitement you deserve.